Ethan Sterling walked into the Grand Diamond Gala with a smirk on his face and a mistress on his arm, convinced he was the smartest man in the room. He had told his wife, Sophia, that he was working late, leaving her at home in her sweatpants to scrub the dishes. He thought Sophia was just a simple, boring housewife who knew nothing of his high society ambitions. He was wrong. Dead wrong. Ethan didn't know that the champagne he was drinking, the venue he was standing in, and the $50 million diamond collection everyone was whispering about all belonged to the woman he left at home. And tonight, she wasn't washing dishes. She was coming to collect a debt. The reflection in the floor-to-ceiling mirror of the penthouse bedroom showed a man who believed he had conquered the world. Ethan Sterling adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke Brioni suit, the fabric shimmering slightly under the recessed lighting. He turned his head, admiring the sharp jawline that had charmed investors and the cold blue eyes that he believed intimidated his rivals. At 32, Ethan was a mid-level executive at a logistics firm, but in his mind, he was a titan of industry waiting to be crowned. "Are you sure you have to go tonight?" The soft voice broke his concentration. Ethan didn't turn around. He watched through the mirror as Sophia, his wife of 4 years, entered the room. She was holding a basket of laundry, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing an oversized grey t-shirt that had seen better days. She looked tired, plain. "Sophia, we've been over this," Ethan sighed, spraying a mist of Tom Ford Oud wood on his neck. "It's a networking event for the firm. Boring, stuffy, old men talking about supply chains. You'd hate it. Besides, you said you wanted to catch up on your reading." Sophia set the basket down. "I know, Ethan, it's our anniversary on Sunday. I thought maybe we could start the weekend early. Just the two of us." Ethan finally turned, flashing that practiced, patronizing smile he reserved just for her. He walked over and kissed her forehead, careful not to let his expensive suit touch her laundry basket. "I'm doing this for us, Sophie. For our future. I land this account with the Harrington Group tonight, and I'm looking at a VP spot. That means a summer house in the Hamptons. That means the life you deserve." Sophia looked down, her eyelashes fluttering. "I have the life I want, Ethan. I just want my husband." "Don't be needy," he snapped, his mask slipping for a fraction of a second before he smoothed it over. "I'll be late. Don't wait up." He grabbed his platinum Amex and his car keys off the dresser. He didn't notice the way Sophia's eyes lingered on the invitation peeking out of his inner pocket. It was embossed with silver leaf and featured a singular crest, a lion holding a diamond. As the heavy oak door slammed shut, the silence of the penthouse was deafening. Sophia stood there for a moment, the meek housewife demeanor evaporating from her posture like mist in the sun. She straightened her back. Her eyes, previously dull and submissive, sharpened into a gaze of terrified steel. She walked over to the window, watching Ethan's black Porsche Panamera peel out of the driveway. "Harrington Group," she whispered to the empty room. A small, cold smile touched her lips. "You're going to try to pitch to the Harrington Group? Good luck, Ethan." She pulled a phone from the pocket of her sweatpants. Not the cracked iPhone 11 she let Ethan see, but a sleek, encrypted Vertu device. She dialed a single number. "It's Sophia," she said, her voice commanding and crisp. "Prepare the car, and tell security to be on high alert. I'm coming to the gala, and I'm wearing the Midnight Star." Ethan's mood soared as he drove away from the suburbs and toward the glittering heart of the city. He loved the power of the Porsche, but he hated the anchor that was his domestic life. Sophia was safe. She was reliable. She was the woman who had supported him when he was a nobody, paying his rent while he finished his MBA. But now, Now she was just background noise. She didn't understand luxury. She didn't understand ambition. He pulled up to the curb of a luxury high-rise in the downtown district. A moment later, the passenger door opened, and the scent of Chanel No. 5, too much of it, filled the car. "Hey, baby," Chloe purred, sliding into the leather seat. Chloe Vane was everything Sophia wasn't. She was loud, she was flashy, and she was expensive. She wore a red dress that was cut aggressively low, clinging to her curves like a second skin. Her jewelry was gold and chunky, flashy, but if you knew what to look for, you could tell the diamonds were cubic zirconia. But Ethan didn't know what to look for. He just saw the shine. "You look incredible," Ethan said, placing a hand on her thigh as he merged back into traffic. "I better," Chloe laughed, checking her makeup in the visor mirror. "This dress cost a fortune. You're lucky I'm letting you show me off. So, where is this thing again?" "The Ritz." "Better," Ethan said, puffing his chest out. "The Kensington Hall. It's the Diamond Gala, Chloe. Tickets are $5,000 a pop, the most exclusive event of the decade. Everyone who is anyone will be there. Elon's people, the Vanderbilts, the heirs to the LVMH fortune." "Kensington Hall?" Chloe wrinkled her nose. "Never heard of it." "That's because it's old money, babe. Real money. The Kensington family owns half the real estate in London and New York, but they're ghosts. No one sees them. Rumor has it the last surviving heir is a recluse. But tonight, they're opening the vault for charity." Ethan felt a surge of adrenaline. This was his arena. He was going to walk in there, dazzle the elites with his charm, introduce Chloe as his fiancée or business partner. He hadn't decided which lie was better yet, and close the deal of a lifetime. He didn't realize that the invitation in his pocket wasn't sent to him because of his business acumen. It was sent because the head of the guest list had been instructed to ensure Mr. Sterling had a front row seat to his own funeral. They arrived at the venue. The Kensington Hall was a fortress of limestone and marble, bathed in golden floodlights. A red carpet stretched up the massive steps, flanked by velvet ropes and stoic security guards wearing earpieces. Paparazzi were screaming names, flashbulbs popping like lightning storms. Ethan handed the keys to the valet, a young man who looked at the Porsche with a bored expression, having just parked 3 Rolls-Royces and a Bugatti. "Ready?" Ethan asked, offering his arm to Chloe. "Born ready," she grinned, adjusting her dress to show more leg. As they stepped onto the carpet, Ethan waited for the cameras to turn toward him. He paused, smiling, ready for the flash. But the cameras didn't flash. The photographers looked right through him, their lenses trained on an elderly couple behind him, the Duke and Duchess of Westminster. "Move along, sir," a security guard murmured, ushering Ethan forward. "You're blocking the entrance." Ethan's face flushed red. He grabbed Chloe's arm a little too tightly and hurried her inside. "Philistines," he muttered. "They don't know talent when they see it." "Oh, watch the merchandise," Chloe snapped, pulling her arm away. "It's fine, babe. Once we get inside, they'll all be looking at me." They passed through the massive mahogany doors and into the grand ballroom. If the outside was impressive, the inside was otherworldly. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the vaulted ceiling. The walls were draped in silk. A live orchestra played a haunting waltz from a balcony above. And everywhere there were diamonds. Women wore necklaces that could pay off the national debt of a small country. Ethan took a deep breath. "Okay, Chloe. Game face. We find Mr. Harrington, we charm him, and we leave legends." He didn't notice the eyes on them. He didn't notice the way the older matrons whispered behind their fans, or the way the tuxedoed waiters exchanged subtle glances as he walked by. They weren't admiring him. They were waiting. The atmosphere in the ballroom was thick with wealth. It was a tangible weight. Ethan grabbed 2 glasses of champagne from a passing tray, handing one to Chloe, who immediately downed half of it. "Slow down," Ethan hissed. "We need to look refined." "It's an open bar, Ethan. Relax." She rolled her eyes. "So, where's this Harrington guy?" Ethan scanned the room. He spotted Marcus Harrington, the CEO of Harrington Logistics, standing near the ice sculpture. He was a tall, imposing man with silver hair, talking to a group of serious-looking individuals. "Stay here," Ethan said. "Actually, no. Come with me. Just nod and smile." Ethan approached the circle, projecting confidence. "Mr. Harrington, wonderful evening, isn't it?" Marcus Harrington turned slowly. His eyes were cold, analyzing Ethan like a bug under a microscope. "And you are?" "Ethan Sterling. We exchanged emails regarding the logistics merger in the tri-state area. I represent Sterling & Co." "Ah," Harrington said, his tone flat. "The email sender." "I thought we could discuss the synergy between our firms," Ethan pressed, ignoring the dismissal in Harrington's tone. "This is my partner, Chloe." Chloe waved, holding her empty glass. "Higher." Harrington looked at Chloe, then back at Ethan. A look of distinct distaste curled his lip. "Mr. Sterling, this is a charity gala for the preservation of historical arts. It is hardly the place to discuss synergy. Furthermore," Harrington paused, glancing at someone over Ethan's shoulder, "I was under the impression you were a family man. I believe your bio stated you were happily married to a—" "Sophia?" Ethan froze. The blood drained from his face. "Yes. Sophia couldn't make it. She's ill. Terrible flu. This is Chloe, my executive assistant." "Executive assistant," Harrington repeated, looking at Chloe's dress. "I see. Well, Mr. Sterling, I make it a policy never to do business with men who lack judgment. If you manage your personal life this sloppily, I can only imagine what you do with my supply chain." Harrington turned his back on Ethan, effectively ending the conversation. Ethan stood there, stunned. Humiliation burned in his chest. "Old dinosaur," he whispered to Chloe. "He doesn't know what he's missing." "He was rude," Chloe huffed. "Let's go find the food. I'm starving." Ethan dragged her toward the buffet, trying to salvage his ego. "Forget him. There are bigger fish here. Look, that's the CEO of Vander Woodson Tech." As they moved through the crowd, Ethan began to hear the whispers. At first, he thought they were just background noise, but the name kept coming up. "Is she coming?" "Heard the Heiress is making an appearance." The Kensington heir, wearing the midnight star. "Who is this Heiress everyone is talking about?" Chloe asked, picking at a lobster tail. "Some old lady, probably," Ethan dismissed, scanning the room for his next target. "The Kensington family hasn't been seen in public for years, probably rolling her out in a wheelchair to wave at the peasants." Suddenly the lights in the ballroom dimmed. The orchestra stopped playing. A hush fell over the crowd of 300 people. A spotlight hit the top of the grand staircase. The master of ceremonies, a man with a booming British accent, stepped up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "distinguished guests, it is my distinct honor to welcome the host of this evening, the chairwoman of the Kensington Foundation, the owner of this hall, and the sole heiress to the Kensington Diamond legacy." Ethan looked up, bored. He checked his watch. He was wondering if he could leave early and take Chloe to a club. "Please welcome," the voice boomed, "Mrs. Sophia Kensington Sterling." Ethan dropped his champagne glass. It shattered on the marble floor, the sound echoing in the silence. "Sophia?" He looked up at the top of the stairs. The woman standing there was not the woman he had left in sweatpants. She was wearing a gown of midnight blue velvet that hugged a figure he had ignored for years. It was off the shoulder, elegant and regal. Her hair was cascading in Hollywood waves. Her makeup was sharp, accentuating fierce cheekbones. But it was what was around her neck that made the room gasp. The midnight star. A sapphire the size of a hen's egg, surrounded by 300 flawless white diamonds. A piece of jewelry worth more than Ethan would earn in 10 lifetimes. She stood tall, looking down at the crowd. Her eyes scanned the room, passing over billionaires and dukes, until they locked onto one specific spot near the buffet. She locked eyes with Ethan, and then she smiled. It wasn't a loving smile. It was the smile of a predator looking at a wounded gazelle. Ethan felt his knees buckle. "No," he whispered. That's impossible." Chloe looked up, squinting. "Hey, doesn't that look like your wife? But hot?" Ethan didn't think. He reacted. His brain was misfiring, unable to reconcile the image of the woman scrubbing his floors with the queen descending the marble staircase. It had to be a prank, a hallucination, or worse, she was spending his money to play dress-up. "Sophia!" Ethan barked, his voice cracking slightly. He shoved past a waiter holding a tray of caviar blinis. "Sophia, what the hell is this?" He started marching toward the staircase, his face twisted in a mix of confusion and rage. He expected the crowd to part for him. He was the husband, after all. He was the head of the household, but the crowd didn't part. They tightened. A wall of black tuxedos materialized in front of him. 3 men, each built like a linebacker, blocked his path. The man in the center was older, with a scar running through his eyebrow and an earpiece coiled like a snake behind his ear. This was Arthur Thorne, the head of Kensington Private Security, a man who used to run protection details for prime ministers. "Step aside," Ethan commanded, trying to summon his executive voice. "That is my wife." Arthur Thorne didn't blink. He looked down at Ethan with the kind of pity one might show a dog running into traffic. "Sir," Thorne said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in Ethan's chest. "Please lower your voice. You are disturbing the guests." I'm her husband," Ethan shouted, pointing a shaking finger at Sophia, who had reached the bottom of the stairs. She was currently accepting a kiss on the hand from the Duke of Westminster. She hadn't even glanced in Ethan's direction since that first smile. "Miss Kensington is not receiving personal inquiries at this time," Thorne said calmly. "Miss Kensington, her name is Mrs. Sterling." Ethan lunged forward, trying to push past Thorne. It was a mistake. In a blur of motion, Thorne caught Ethan's wrist. He didn't twist it. He simply held it with a grip like iron. The pressure was immense. Ethan gasped, his knees buckling slightly. "Let go of me!" Ethan squeaked. "Ethan, stop it!" Chloe hissed, appearing at his elbow. She looked terrified. She had been scanning the room and realized something Ethan hadn't. Everyone was staring at them with disgust. "You're making a scene. Let's just go." "I'm not going anywhere until she explains why she's wearing a necklace that costs more than our apartment," Ethan snarled, yanking his arm free. At that moment, Sophia turned. She didn't shout. She didn't look angry. She simply raised one elegant hand, and the entire ballroom, filled with 300 of the world's most powerful people, went silent. She walked toward Ethan. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea. Her heels clicked rhythmically on the marble floor. Click, click, click. A countdown to destruction. She stopped 3 feet away from him. Up close, she looked even more radiant and more terrifying. The midnight star blazed at her throat. "Sophia," Ethan breathed, his anger suddenly replaced by confusion. "Babe, what is going on? Why didn't you tell me you knew these people? We can use this. Introduce me to Harrington properly." He reached out to touch her arm. Sophia took a half-step back, avoiding his touch as if he were contagious. "Ethan," she said. Her voice was smooth, cultured, the voice of old money, not the tired whisper he was used to. "You seem confused. You told me you were going to a boring networking event for the firm. Yet here you are, at my gala." She shifted her gaze to Chloe. She looked the mistress up and down, analyzing the cheap fabric of her dress, the fake gold, the terrified expression. "And you brought a guest," Sophia noted dryly. "How charitable of you." She's my assistant," Ethan stammered, sweating profusely. Sophia laughed. It was a light, tinkling sound that chilled the blood of everyone who heard it. "Oh, Ethan, you never were a good liar. Chloe Vane, 24, aspiring Instagram model, currently unemployed. You met her 3 months ago at the Sky Bar. You bought her that bracelet with our joint savings account. Transaction date, October 14th. The crowd gasped. Chloe's eyes went wide. "How do you know that?" "I know everything," Sophia said softly. "I own the bank you bank with, Ethan." Ethan felt the room spinning. You own the bank?" "I own the holding company that owns the bank," Sophia corrected effortlessly. "And the logistics firm you work for. Kensington Global Ventures just acquired a 51% controlling stake this morning." Ethan's jaw dropped. You're my boss?" "Technically," Sophia mused, tapping her chin with a manicured finger. "I'm your boss's boss's boss. And I have to say, looking at your quarterly performance reviews, I'm not impressed." She turned her back on him and walked toward the microphone on the stage. Ethan tried to follow, but Thorne stepped in his way again. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sophia said into the mic, her voice booming through the hall. "Thank you for your patience. Tonight is about value. It is about recognizing what is precious and discarding what is fake." She looked directly at Ethan. "For 4 years I lived a lie. I pretended to be a woman of no means because I wanted to be loved for who I was, not for the Kensington fortune. I wanted a partner who would build a life with me, brick by brick." She paused, letting the silence hang heavy. "Instead, I found a man who saw my simplicity as a weakness. A man who cheated, lied, and belittled me because he thought he was the prize. A man who brought his mistress to my house, to my event, thinking he was entering a world he could conquer." She gestured to the large screen behind her. Suddenly, a video began to play. It was footage from their penthouse living room. It was time-stamped 2 hours ago. It showed Ethan fixing his tie and sneering at Sophia's back. The audio was crystal clear. "I'm doing this for us, Sophie. Don't be needy." Then the video cut to the car ride, dashcam footage. "She's just background noise. She doesn't understand ambition." The crowd erupted in murmurs. "Disgraceful," Marcus Harrington whispered, loud enough for Ethan to hear. "Absolutely classless." Ethan stood frozen, watching his own arrogance played back on a 20-foot screen. He felt naked, stripped of every shred of dignity. "Tonight," Sophia continued, "I am making a donation. The Kensington Foundation is donating $50 million to the Women's Legal Defense Fund." Applause thundered through the room. "And," Sophia added, her eyes hardening, "I am also announcing a personal divestment. As of this moment, I have filed for divorce on the grounds of adultery, captured in 4K resolution." She snapped her fingers. "Security, please remove the trash. It's beginning to smell. The grip of iron." The command hung in the air like the blade of a guillotine. "Security, please remove the trash." For a heartbeat, Ethan Sterling thought he could laugh it off. He thought he could turn to the crowd, flash his signature charming smile, the one that had closed deals and seduced mistresses, and play it off as a lover's quarrel. He opened his mouth to speak, to say something witty, to reclaim the narrative. But before a sound could leave his throat, the air was sucked out of his personal space. Arthur Thorne moved with a speed that belied his size. The head of Kensington Security didn't grab Ethan by the collar like a bar bouncer. That would have been too crude for an event of this caliber. Instead, Thorne utilized a pressure point grip on Ethan's upper arm, clamping down on the tricep with a force that sent a jolt of paralyzing electricity down to Ethan's fingertips. "Walk," Thorne whispered. It wasn't a suggestion, it was a statement of physics. "Get your hands off me," Ethan gasped, his voice shrill and cracking, betraying the terror rising in his chest. "Do you know who I am? I am the husband of the hostess. I am a VIP. "You are a trespasser," Thorne corrected, his voice a low rumble that only Ethan could hear. "And you are making a scene." Ethan tried to plant his feet, to make a stand, but two other security operatives, men with necks as thick as tree trunks and eyes devoid of empathy, flanked him instantly. They created a moving wall, propelling him backward. As he was forced away from the stage, Ethan looked frantically around the room. He sought eye contact. He looked for allies. He looked for the men he had been drinking with just 20 minutes ago. He locked eyes with Marcus Harrington, the man whose approval he had so desperate craved. Harrington held a crystal flute of champagne. As Ethan was dragged past him, Harrington didn't look away. He simply took a sip of his drink, raised an eyebrow, and turned his back. It was a dismissal more painful than a slap. Ethan scanned the faces of the elite, the heiresses, the tech moguls, the politicians. He expected to see outrage on his behalf. He expected someone to shout, "Stop! That's a man of dignity!" Instead, he saw amusement. He saw smartphones raised in the air, recording his demise. He saw women whispering behind their fans, their eyes dancing with the thrill of the scandal. He realized, with a sickening lurch of his stomach, that he wasn't a guest to them. He was the evening's entertainment. He was the court jester being fed to the lions. "Sophia!" Ethan screamed, twisting his neck back toward the staircase. "Sophia, stop this. We can talk about this at home. Don't do this to me." Far away, at the top of the marble steps, Sophia Kensington didn't even flinch. She was laughing at something the Duke of Westminster had said, her hand resting lightly on her diamond necklace, the midnight star. She looked radiant, unbothered, and completely unreachable. She had already forgotten him. The gauntlet. They reached the massive double doors of the ballroom. Thorne shoved them open, and the noise of the party was instantly cut off, replaced by the sterile, echoing silence of the grand lobby. But the silence didn't last. The lobby was the holding pen for the press. The paparazzi who hadn't been allowed inside were waiting like sharks, sensing blood in the water. They had been bored all night, snapping photos of arrivals. They were hungry for a story. And then the doors flew open, and Ethan Sterling was ejected. It was as if a grenade went off. Pop, 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 pop. The flashbulbs exploded in a blinding stroboscope of white light. It was disorienting, nauseating. Ethan threw his hands up to shield his face, blinking rapidly, spots dancing in his vision. "Mr. Sterling! Mr. Sterling! Over here! Is it true your wife is the sole heir to the Kensington estate? Did you bring a mistress to the Diamond Gala? How long have you been cheating, Ethan? Look this way, cheater. Give us a smile." The questions were bullets, fired in rapid succession. How did they know? The video inside had only played 2 minutes ago. How did the press outside already know about the mistress? Social media, Ethan realized with horror. The people inside had been live streaming. The story was already trending. He wasn't just being kicked out of a party, he was being kicked out of society, in real time, globally. "No comment," Ethan shouted, pushing a microphone away from his face. "Get that camera out of my face. I'll sue you. I'll sue all of you. You'll need a lawyer for that," a photographer shouted back, laughing. "Can you afford one now?" Thorne and his team didn't stop. They marched Ethan through the gauntlet, using him as a plough to part the sea of reporters. They reached the revolving glass doors of the entrance. "This is where we part ways, Mr. Sterling," Thorne said. With one final firm shove, Ethan was thrust out into the cool night air of the city sidewalk. He stumbled, his expensive Italian dress shoes slipping on the pavement, and he fell to one knee. The heavy glass doors spun shut behind him. 2 large guards took up positions in front of them, arms crossed. The fortress was sealed, the shattering of the illusion. Ethan scrambled to his feet, brushing the grit off his bespoke trousers. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. "Chloe!" he yelled, looking around wildly. The revolving door spun again, and Chloe Vane emerged. She wasn't being dragged. She had walked out voluntarily, but quickly, covering her face with a clutch purse to hide from the cameras. She looked furious. Her mascara was smudged, and the cheap fabric of her red dress looked garish under the harsh streetlights. "Chloe!" Ethan rushed toward her, relief flooding his veins. At least he wasn't alone. At least he had her. "Baby, thank God. Did you see that? Did you see what she did? She's insane. She's absolutely psychotic." Ethan reached for her, trying to pull her into a hug, needing the reassurance of her touch. Chloe shoved him away, hard. Ethan stumbled back, stunned. "Chloe! Don't touch me!" she hissed, her voice vibrating with venom. She wasn't looking at him with love. She was looking at him with pure, unadulterated loathing. "You are a liar, Ethan. A fraud." "Me?" Ethan blinked, confused. "She's the one who lied. She pretended to be poor for 4 years. She's worth billions, Chloe. Billions. And she hid it from me." "And you acted like you were somebody," Chloe screamed, not caring about the paparazzi snapping photos of their breakdown from 10 feet away. "You told me you were a top executive. You told me you were going to make partner. You told me you had money." "I do," Ethan pleaded. "I make good money. I have the penthouse, the car." "You have nothing," Chloe spat. "I saw the video, Ethan. I heard what she said. She owns your company. She owns your bank. You're just a middle manager with a credit card debt. You tricked me." "I tricked you?" Ethan felt a surge of anger. "I left my wife for you. I brought you here tonight to show you off. You brought me here to be humiliated." Chloe adjusted her strap, her eyes cold. "I'm 24, Ethan. I don't date project managers with baggage. I date winners. And you're the biggest loser in New York City right now." She pulled out her phone and tapped the screen. A sleek black Uber pulled up to the curb seconds later. "Chloe, wait," Ethan begged, grabbing the door handle before she could open it. "Don't leave me here. Not like this. We can figure this out. We can sue her. We'll be rich. I promise." Chloe looked at his hand on the door handle, then up at his face. She sneered. "Let go, Ethan. Before I call the police and tell them you're harassing me. I'm sure the press would love that headline." Ethan let go. He watched her slide into the back seat. She didn't look back. She was already typing on her phone, probably deleting her photos of him from Instagram. The car merged into traffic and disappeared, taking the last shred of his ego with it. The repossession of dignity. Ethan stood alone on the sidewalk. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. He needed to get out of here. He needed to go home, regroup, and call a lawyer. He needed his car. "Valet!" Ethan shouted, storming toward the valet stand. "My car. Now. The black Porsche Panamera. Ticket number 402. He slammed the ticket onto the podium. The valet was the same young man from earlier, the one Ethan had tossed his keys to without making eye contact. The young man looked at the ticket, then looked up at Ethan. His expression was unreadable. "One moment, sir," the valet said. He didn't run to get the car. Instead, he signaled to a man standing in the shadows near a tow truck parked just down the block. The man in the shadows stepped forward. He was wearing a grey jumpsuit and holding a clipboard. He looked tired and bored. "Ethan Sterling?" the man asked. "Yes, that's me. Who are you?" "Where is my car?" "I'm from Tri-State Asset Recovery," the man said, clicking a pen. "I'm here for the vehicle." "What?" Ethan laughed, a hysterical bubbling sound. "You're joking. I leased that car. The payments are automatic." "Yeah, about that," the repo man said, glancing at his paperwork. "We got a flag on the account about 20 minutes ago. Payment default. And since the primary guarantor on the lease pulled their backing..." "The guarantor?" Ethan's blood ran cold. "Sophia co-signed the lease?" "Says here the lease was backed by Kensington Ventures," the man read. "They revoked the guarantee, which means the contract is void effective immediately. We're taking the car." "You can't leave me here," Ethan shouted. "I have no way home." The valet stepped forward, dangling the keys. "Actually, Mr. Sterling, there are personal items in the vehicle. Would you like to retrieve them before we tow it?" Ethan snatched the keys and ran to the Porsche. He opened the door, desperate to sit in the familiar leather seat to feel safe. "Sir, you can't start the engine," the repo man warned. "Just the personal items." Ethan grabbed his sunglasses and a pack of gum from the center console. He looked at the steering wheel, the symbol of his success. He gripped it one last time. "Time's up," the repo man said. Ethan stepped out. He watched as they hooked his car, his beautiful, sleek, German-engineered identity, onto the back of the dirty truck. He watched as they hoisted it up like a carcass. The digital execution. The truck drove away. Ethan was left standing on the curb in his tuxedo, holding a pack of gum and a pair of sunglasses. It started to drizzle. Of course it did. He reached into his pocket for his phone. He needed to call an Uber. He opened the app. Payment method declined. He frowned. He switched to his Platinum Amex. Payment method declined. He switched to his debit card. Card declined. Contact your financial institution. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced his chest. He opened his banking app. He tried to log in. Access denied. Reason, account frozen, pursuant to court order. Docket 944-992B. Pending investigation for embezzlement and fraud. Embezzlement, Ethan whispered to the wet screen. A notification banner dropped down from the top of his screen. It was an email. Priority high. Sender. Human Resources. Sterling Logistics. A Kensington company. His fingers trembled so badly he almost dropped the phone. He opened the email. "Mr. Sterling, effective immediately. Your employment with Sterling Logistics is terminated for cause. An internal audit has revealed significant discrepancies in your expense reporting over the last 24 fiscal months. Given the severity of the misconduct and the breach of our code of ethics, we have forwarded our findings to the district attorney's office. Security has already cleared your desk. Your personal effects have been mailed to your address on file. Do not attempt to enter the building. Your badge has been deactivated." Ethan stared at the words until they blurred. Terminated. Fraud. District Attorney. He looked up at the Kensington Hall. The lights were still blazing. He could hear the faint sound of the orchestra playing inside. He could imagine Sophia in there, raising a glass, surrounded by warmth, wealth, and power. She hadn't just divorced him. She hadn't just embarrassed him. She had erased him. Ethan looked down at his feet. The water was soaking through his socks. He had no car. He had no money. He had no job. He had no wife. He had no mistress. He didn't even have enough money for the subway. He began to walk. He walked away from the lights, away from the cameras, away from the life he thought he deserved. He walked into the dark, wet streets of the city, a man made of ash, dissolving in the rain. The silence of his phone in his pocket was deafening. It was the sound of a world that no longer had any use for Ethan Sterling. The legal slaughter. The unraveling of Ethan Sterling's life did not happen all at once. It wasn't a quick Band-Aid rip. It was a slow, surgical dismantling, performed by the most expensive lawyers in New York City. 3 days after the gala, Ethan sat in a conference room at Harrow, Thorne and Associates. The table was made of mahogany, long enough to land a small plane on. On one side sat Ethan, alone, wearing a rumpled suit he had retrieved from the dry cleaners because he could no longer access his penthouse closet. On the other side sat a phalanx of 6 lawyers, led by a woman named Evelyn Sharp. She was known in the city as the Guillotine. Sophia wasn't there. Of course she wasn't. "Mr. Sterling," Evelyn Sharp began, adjusting her rimless glasses. She didn't look up from the file in front of her. "We are skipping the pleasantries. My client, Miss Kensington, has instructed us to expedite this process. She is generous, but she is not foolish." "I want half," Ethan blurted out, his voice sounding thin and pathetic in the acoustic perfection of the room. "I know the law. We were married for 4 years. California is a community property state. Her assets—" Evelyn finally looked up. Her eyes were dead. "You signed a prenuptial agreement, Mr. Sterling." "I signed a napkin," Ethan argued. "She told me it was just a formality, because her grandmother left her a small trust fund. I didn't know she was the Kensington." "Ignorance of the asset portfolio does not invalidate the signature," Evelyn said coldly. She slid a document across the table. "However, that is the least of your worries. Ms. Kensington is willing to forgo the adultery lawsuit for emotional distress and public humiliation, which, given the viral nature of the video footage from the gala, would likely bankrupt you for 3 lifetimes. In exchange, you will sign this NDA and walk away." "Walk away with what?" Ethan asked, sweating. "Your freedom," Evelyn replied. "Because if you don't sign, we release the forensic audit of your expense reports from your time at the logistics firm." Ethan froze. The air left his lungs. "Over the last 2 years," Evelyn read from a sheet, "you expensed $24,000 in client dinners that were actually dates with Miss Chloe Vane. You expensed travel accommodations that were weekend getaways to Cabo. That is corporate embezzlement, Mr. Sterling, grand larceny, prison time." Ethan slumped in his chair. He realized then that Sophia hadn't just been washing his dishes and folding his laundry all those years. She had been watching. She had known every lie, every stolen dollar, every betrayal. She had held the sword over his neck the entire time, waiting for him to give her a reason to drop it. He picked up the pen. His hand shook so violently he could barely write. He signed his life away. The social excision. If the legal battle was a slaughter, the social fallout was a nuclear winter. Ethan found out that friends in high society are not actually friends. They are barnacles that attach themselves to the hull of a successful ship. When the ship sinks, the barnacles detach instantly. He tried to call Marcus, his best man, from the wedding. "The number you have dialed has been disconnected, or is no longer in service." He tried to text Brad, a VP at a rival firm he used to golf with. "Read at 4:15 p.m. No reply. Then came the internet. The video of Sophia revealing his affair on the giant screen at the gala had gone viral. It had 45 million views on TikTok. He was a meme. They called him the Diamond Fumbler. There were remixes of his terrified face when Arthur Thorne grabbed his wrist. He couldn't walk down the street without someone pointing a phone at him. He had become the face of arrogance and failure. And Chloe? The woman he had destroyed his marriage for? 2 weeks after the gala, Ethan was sitting in a dive bar in Queens, drinking cheap beer because his credit cards were frozen. The TV above the bar was tuned to an entertainment news channel. "Coming up next," the anchor chirped. An exclusive interview with the woman caught in the middle of the Kensington scandal. Chloe Vane tells all. Ethan watched in horror as Chloe appeared on screen. She was crying, fake, dry tears. "I didn't know," Chloe sobbed into the camera. "Ethan told me they were separated. He told me she was abusive. I was a victim too. He manipulated me just like he manipulated her. I just want Sophia to know. I'm so sorry. Girl power, you know?" "Liar!" Ethan screamed at the TV, throwing his beer coaster. The bartender glared at him. "Hey pal, keep it down or get out." Ethan looked around. No one cared. He wasn't a VP anymore. He was just a drunk guy in a cheap suit, shouting at a television. The descent. 3 months later, the money was gone. The severance he got from his job was non-existent due to the embezzlement cause. The Porsche was repossessed. The lease on the penthouse was terminated. Ethan Sterling, the man who used to critique the thread count of his Egyptian cotton sheets, was now living in a basement apartment in the Bronx. The ceiling had water stains that looked like maps of countries that didn't exist. The radiator clanked like a dying engine. He had 2 roommates, a college student who played techno music until 4 a.m., and a guy named Rico who kept a pet python in a glass tank in the living room. Ethan sat on his futon, staring at his laptop. He had applied to 200 jobs. "Dear Mr. Sterling, while your background is impressive, we have decided to move forward with other candidates. Dear Mr. Sterling, at this time, we feel your values do not align with our corporate culture." The Kensington reach was infinite. Sophia didn't have to blacklist him explicitly. She didn't have to make a single phone call. The name Sterling was radioactive. No reputable company wanted to hire the man who tried to humiliate the most powerful heiress in New York. He was a liability. He sold his Rolex. The pawn shop guy laughed at him. "It's a replica, buddy. Good quality, but fake movement. Worth maybe $200. Ethan had paid $5,000 for it from a connection in the city. Another layer of his fake life peeling away. He took the $200. He needed it for groceries. The bottom 6 months later. The rain in November was cold, the kind that seeped into your bones and stayed there. Ethan pulled the collar of his jacket up. It wasn't the cashmere coat he used to wear. It was a stiff, synthetic parka he bought at a thrift store. He checked his reflection in a shop window. He looked 10 years older. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollowed out by insomnia and regret. The arrogance that had fueled him for a decade had burned out, leaving only a pile of ash. He walked into the Daily Grind, a high-volume coffee franchise in the financial district. He wasn't there for a latte. He punched in his code at the employee entrance. "You're late, Sterling," the shift manager barked. The manager was 22 years old, with a nose ring and a power trip. "One more strike and you're out. Get on the espresso machine. Rush hour starts in 10. "Yes, sir," Ethan muttered. He tied on the green apron. The smell of burnt milk made him nauseous. For the next 4 hours, Ethan was a machine. Steam, pour, cap. Steam, pour, cap. He served men in suits who looked exactly like he used to. He saw the way they looked at him, or rather, the way they didn't look at him. To them, he was part of the machinery, a servant. "Hey," a customer snapped, tapping a credit card on the counter. "I ordered almond milk. This is oat. Are you deaf or just stupid?" Ethan looked up. The customer was a young executive, wearing a Breitling watch and a smug grin. A year ago, Ethan would have fired a man like this for incompetence. A year ago, Ethan would have destroyed him. "I'm sorry," Ethan said, his voice cracking. "I'll remake it." "Yeah, you will. And hurry up. I have a meeting at Kensington Tower." The name hit Ethan like a physical blow. Kensington Tower. The new headquarters Sophia had built. He made the coffee. His hands were shaking. He handed it over. "Keep the change," the man sneered, dropping a dime into the tip jar. The encounter. It was 6 p.m. when Ethan's shift ended. He walked out the back door, into the alleyway, emptying the trash bags into the dumpster. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and walked around to the front of the building to catch the subway. Traffic was stopped. A motorcade was moving slowly down the street. Black SUVs with tinted windows, flanked by police motorcycles. Ethan stopped on the sidewalk. A crowd had gathered. "Who is it?" someone asked. "It's her," a woman whispered reverently. "It's the Queen of New York." The motorcade came to a halt right in front of the coffee shop. The traffic light had turned red, trapping the lead vehicle, a custom Rolls-Royce Phantom, painted a deep midnight blue. Ethan stood 10 feet away. He was frozen. He knew that car. He had seen the designs for it on Sophia's desk years ago, back when he thought she was sketching dream cars she could never afford. The back window of the Rolls-Royce hummed down silently. Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs. "She's going to see me," he thought. "She's going to see me in this apron, smelling like old milk, standing in the rain." He wanted to run. He wanted to hide. But he couldn't move. The window lowered completely. Sophia sat inside. She was wearing a cream-colored business suit, looking through a stack of documents. She looked peaceful. The tension that used to line her eyes when they were married, the constant worry of pleasing him, of walking on eggshells, was gone. She looked younger, vibrant, powerful. Sitting next to her was a man. He wasn't a model. He wasn't particularly handsome in the classic sense. He had kind eyes and was reading a book, holding Sophia's hand, absent-mindedly as she worked. Sophia looked up from her papers. She looked out the window. Her gaze swept over the sidewalk. It swept over the tourists, the businessmen, the street vendors. And then, for 1 second, her eyes locked onto Ethan. Ethan held his breath. He waited for the anger. He waited for the smug smile she had given him at the gala. He waited for the recognition. But it never came. Sophia's eyes slid past him without a flicker of recognition. She didn't see her ex-husband. She didn't see the man who had broken her heart. She saw a barista in a green apron. She saw a stranger. She turned back to the man next to her, smiled a genuine, warm smile. A smile Ethan realized he had never actually earned, and the window rolled back up. The light turned green. The car pulled away, disappearing into the canyon of steel and glass. The realization. Ethan stood there for a long time, rain dripping off his nose. That was the true punishment. If she had hated him, it would have meant he still mattered. If she had mocked him, it would have meant he still held power over her emotions. But she didn't hate him. She had simply deleted him. He was the one who had told her, years ago, "You're just background noise, Sophia." Now, the universe had balanced the scales. He was the background noise. He was the static in someone else's broadcast. Ethan looked down at his hands. They were red and chapped from the sanitizer and hot water. He looked at the dime the rude customer had thrown in his tip jar. He realized then that the Diamond Gala hadn't been the night he lost his money. It was the night he lost his delusion. He had spent his whole life chasing diamonds, thinking he was a jeweler, only to find out he was just the velvet cushion, meant to hold the treasure for a moment, and then be discarded when he stopped being useful. He turned around and walked toward the subway station, descending into the dark, underground tunnels, leaving the glittering world of Sophia Kensington far, far above him. Ethan's story is a brutal reminder that true value isn't found in flashiness, loud posturing, or the illusion of success. He mistook Sophia's humility for weakness, and her silence for ignorance. In doing so, he didn't just lose a fortune, he lost the only person who had actually loved him for who he was. By the time he realized that the boring housewife was the architect of his entire life, the foundation had already crumbled. He learned the hard way, that in the game of life, the king might move one space at a time, but the queen can go wherever she wants, and checkmate comes when you least expect it. Wow, talk about instantaneous karma. If you enjoyed watching Ethan get exactly what he deserved, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. What would you do if you found out your partner was secretly a billionaire? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss the next story of betrayal and revenge. Thanks for watching.